The morning sun filtered through the white curtains of the small cottage by the lake, casting golden patterns across the wooden floor. Catherine Morgan stood by the window, her hands wrapped around a warm cup of tea, watching the mist rise from the water. She had always loved this view, but today it felt different. Everything felt different now. Behind her, William Hayes was still sleeping, his breathing steady and peaceful. She turned to look at him, her heart swelling with a love so deep it almost hurt. 23 years they had been together. 23 years of laughter, tears, adventures, and quiet moments just like this one. They had built a life that most people only dreamed of, filled with simple joys and profound connection. Catherine remembered the day they met at the small bookshop in town. She had been reaching for a copy of a poetry collection on the top shelf when William appeared beside her, tall and kind-eyed, offering to help. Their fingers had touched as he handed her the book, and something sparked between them. Something real and undeniable. He had asked her to coffee that same afternoon. They talked for hours, losing track of time as the cafe closed around them. William told her about his work as a teacher, his love for music, and his dream of living somewhere peaceful where he could see the sunrise every morning. Catherine shared her passion for painting, her close relationship with her younger sister Emma, and her belief that the best things in life were always the simplest ones. 6 months later, they were married in a small ceremony by the same lake they now called home. Catherine wore a simple white dress with wildflowers in her hair. William cried when he saw her walking toward him, and she had laughed through her own tears. Their vows were simple but heartfelt. They promised to love each other in sunshine and in storms, in health and in sickness until their very last breath. The years that followed were everything they had hoped for and more. They bought the cottage with money they had saved together, fixing it up room by room. William taught at the local school, inspiring countless children with his patience and wisdom. Catherine painted in the sunroom they had added, her artwork gradually gaining recognition in galleries across the region. But their greatest joy came from the life they built together in the quiet moments between their work. They had created traditions that became the rhythm of their days. Morning tea by the window, evening walks along the lake shore, Sunday afternoons reading together on the porch. They traveled when they could, exploring new places but always happy to return home. They filled their cottage with laughter, music, and the warmth of deep companionship. Friends often remarked on their relationship. There was something special about the way they looked at each other, the way they moved through life as true partners. They rarely argued, and when they did, they resolved things quickly with honest conversation and genuine care for each other's feelings. They had built their marriage on friendship, respect, and a love that grew stronger with each passing year. Catherine took another sip of tea, the liquid now lukewarm in her cup. 3 months ago, everything had changed in the space of a single doctor's appointment. She closed her eyes against the memory, but it came anyway, sharp and clear. They had gone together to see Dr. Peterson about the headaches William had been experiencing. Nothing serious, they thought. Probably just stress or needing new glasses. But the tests revealed something neither of them had expected. A brain tumor. Aggressive and inoperable, the doctor's words had fallen like stones into still water, creating ripples that would change everything. William had been silent on the drive home, his hands gripping the steering wheel tightly. Catherine had held his arm, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. When they reached the cottage, they had stood by the lake for a long time, just holding each other as the sun set behind the mountains. The doctors gave him 6 months, maybe less. That was 3 months ago. Since then, they had tried experimental treatments, changed his diet, explored every option Dr. Peterson suggested. But the tumor was growing faster than anyone had hoped. Last week, the doctor had gently told them it was time to think about making arrangements. Time to say goodbye. William stirred in the bed, and Catherine quickly wiped her eyes, putting on a smile. She had learned to hide her tears from him, saving them for the moments when he was asleep or occupied. She wanted to be strong for him, to fill their remaining time with love and joy rather than sorrow. His eyes opened, and when he saw her standing by the window, his face lit up with that same smile that had captured her heart in the bookshop all those years ago. Despite everything, despite the medication and the pain and the fear, he could still look at her like she was the most beautiful thing in the world. "Good morning, my love," he said, his voice slightly hoarse. "How long have you been up?" "Not long," she lied, walking over to sit on the edge of the bed. She took his hand, feeling how thin it had become. "How are you feeling today?" "Better now that I see you," he replied, bringing her hand to his lips. It was such a simple gesture, one he had done thousands of times before, but today it made her heart ache with the knowledge of how few times remained. They had made a decision together in those early days after the diagnosis. They would not waste their remaining time being sad. They would live fully in whatever days they had left. They would say all the things they needed to say, create all the memories they could, and face this final journey together with the same courage and love they had brought to everything else in their lives. William sat up slowly, and Catherine helped arrange the pillows behind him. The room was filled with the soft morning light, and for a moment, they just looked at each other, no words necessary. Their love had always been like this, communicating in glances and touches as much as in words. "I was thinking," William said, "maybe we could go down to the lake today, like we used to do on Sunday mornings. I know I'm not as steady on my feet, but with your help, I think we could make it." Catherine nodded, her throat tight with emotion. "I'd love that. We can bring our coffee and just sit on the dock like we always did." "Perfect," he said, squeezing her hand. "These are the moments I want to remember, Catherine. These simple, beautiful moments with you." She leaned down and kissed his forehead gently. "We have so many beautiful moments to remember, a whole lifetime of them." As the morning light grew stronger, they sat together in comfortable silence, both knowing that time was running out, but determined to fill every remaining moment with love. Outside the window, the lake sparkled in the sunshine, beautiful and eternal, just as their love would be. The wooden dock creaked softly under their feet as Catherine helped William settle into his favorite spot. She had brought thick blankets and cushions to make him comfortable, along with a thermos of hot coffee and the homemade cookies she had baked the night before. The lake stretched out before them, its surface mirror-smooth in the calm morning air. William leaned against her shoulder, and she wrapped her arm around him, pulling the blanket tighter around both of them. This dock had been witness to so many moments in their life together. It was here that William had first told her he loved her. Here that they had celebrated their 5th anniversary with champagne and strawberries. Here that they had sat through countless sunrises and sunsets, talking about their dreams and fears and everything in between. "Do you remember the night we decided to buy this place?" William asked, his voice soft. He had been having more quiet days lately, days where speaking took effort, and Catherine treasured every word. "How could I forget?" she replied, smiling at the memory. "We had been looking at houses for months, and nothing felt right. Then we drove past this cottage on a whim, and you made me stop the car. It was for sale by owner," William continued, his eyes distant with remembering. "The old man who lived here, Mr. Henderson, was moving to be closer to his daughter. He showed us around, and I watched your face light up when you saw the sunroom. And you loved the workshop out back." Catherine added, "You said you could see us growing old here together." William was quiet for a moment, and Catherine knew what he was thinking. They had imagined many more years than they were going to get. They had talked about retirement, about traveling more, about maybe adopting a dog. They had made plans that would never come to pass. "Catherine," he said, turning to look at her. His eyes were still the same warm brown she had fallen in love with, but there was a sadness in them now that hadn't been there before. "I need to talk to you about something important." She felt her stomach tighten with anxiety, but she nodded. They had promised to be honest with each other, to face everything together. "I've been thinking about after I'm gone," he began, and she started to protest, but he gently squeezed her hand. "Please, let me say this. I need to know that you're going to be okay. That you're going to keep living, keep painting, keep finding joy in life." "William, I don't want to talk about this," Catherine said, her voice breaking. "Not now. Not on such a beautiful morning." "That's exactly why we need to talk about it now," he insisted gently. "Because we have this beautiful morning. Because we're here together. I need to say these things while I still can, while my mind is clear." Catherine wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, nodding reluctantly. She knew he was right, but it didn't make it any easier. "I don't want you to stop living when I'm gone," William continued. "I want you to keep this cottage if it brings you peace, or sell it if it brings you pain. I want you to paint the most beautiful pictures you've ever created. I want you to travel to all those places we talked about visiting. I want you to laugh again, Catherine. Really laugh the way you used to. How can I do any of that without you?" she whispered, the tears flowing freely now. Because you're strong, he said firmly, stronger than you know. And because our love doesn't end when I die, it stays with you. In every memory, every moment we shared. You'll carry me with you, and that will help you keep going. They sat in silence for a while, Catherine crying quietly against his shoulder while he stroked her hair. A pair of ducks landed on the water nearby, their presence a reminder that life continued, that the world kept turning even when your own world was falling apart. I have something for you, William said after a while. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small leather journal. I've been writing in this every day since the diagnosis. Letters to you, memories I want you to have, things I never said but always felt. Catherine took the journal with trembling hands. It was worn and well used, filled with William's familiar handwriting. She opened to a random page and read, Today Catherine made blueberry pancakes and we ate them on the porch. I watched her laugh at something silly, and I thought about how lucky I am, how impossibly incredibly lucky to have found her, to have loved her, to have been loved by her. There's one letter for every week for the next 2 years, William explained. I wanted you to have something from me even after I'm gone. Open them whenever you need to feel close to me. Catherine clutched the journal to her chest, unable to speak. The gift was so typical of William, always thinking of her, always trying to make things easier even when he was the one suffering. Thank you, she finally managed to say. This is the most precious gift anyone has ever given me. They spent the rest of the morning on the dock, talking about their favorite memories. William reminded her of the time they got lost hiking in the mountains and had to be rescued by a park ranger. Catherine brought up their disastrous attempt at ballroom dancing lessons, where they had laughed so hard they couldn't complete a single dance. They remembered holidays with family, quiet evenings by the fireplace, and all the small moments that had woven together to create their beautiful life. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, William grew tired. Catherine helped him back to the cottage, supporting his weight as they walked slowly up the path. He was getting weaker every day, and they both knew his time was limited. But instead of dwelling on what was coming, they focused on what they still had. That afternoon, Emma arrived for a visit. Catherine's younger sister had been coming by regularly since the diagnosis, bringing groceries and helping with household tasks. But more importantly, she brought life and energy into the cottage, telling funny stories and making William laugh. How's my favorite brother-in-law? Emma asked, giving William a gentle hug. She was careful not to squeeze too hard, aware of how fragile he had become. Still your only brother-in-law, William replied with a smile, and doing better now that you're here. Emma had brought photo albums with her, old pictures from when they were all younger. They spent hours looking through them, laughing at old hairstyles and remembered adventures. There were pictures from William and Catherine's wedding, from family holidays, from birthday parties and celebrations. Look at this one, Emma said, pointing to a photo of Catherine and William at a friend's wedding, dancing close together. You two have always been so in love. It's like nothing else existed when you looked at each other. That's because nothing else did, William said, reaching for Catherine's hand. She's been my whole world since the day I met her. As evening approached, Emma prepared to leave. She hugged Catherine tightly at the door. Call me if you need anything, she whispered. Day or night, I'm here for you. After Emma left, Catherine and William had a quiet dinner together. She had made his favorite soup, though he could only manage a few spoonfuls. They didn't talk much, content to simply be in each other's presence. The silence between them was comfortable, the kind that only comes from years of deep companionship. Later, as they prepared for bed, William took Catherine's hand. Thank you, he said simply. For what? For today. For every day. For loving me the way you have. I know this isn't easy for you, watching me decline. But you've been so strong, so brave. You've made these last months bearable. Catherine helped him into bed, then climbed in beside him, careful not to disturb the pillows propped up to help him breathe easier. She laid her head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat, trying to memorize the sound. I love you, William Hayes, she said softly. I have loved you from the moment I met you, and I will love you forever. And I love you, Catherine Morgan, he replied, using her maiden name like he sometimes did when he wanted to remind her of their beginning. You are the best thing that ever happened to me. They fell asleep like that, wrapped in each other's arms, holding tight to the love that had sustained them through everything. The next few weeks passed in a blur of precious moments and difficult realities. William's condition was deteriorating faster than the doctors had predicted. Some days he was strong enough to sit in his favorite chair by the window, reading or listening to music. Other days he barely had the energy to get out of bed. But through it all, Catherine never left his side. She had taken a leave of absence from the gallery that represented her artwork, and friends from town had organized a meal train, bringing dinner every evening so Catherine could focus entirely on William. The community had rallied around them, offering support in countless ways. But the nights were still hard, filled with fear and sorrow and the desperate wish that things could be different. One afternoon, William asked Catherine to bring him his guitar. He hadn't played in weeks, and she worried he wouldn't have the strength. But when she placed the instrument gently in his hands, his face lit up with a joy she hadn't seen in days. "I want to play for you," he said, his fingers finding familiar positions on the frets despite their trembling. "Like I used to when we were dating." Catherine sat on the floor beside his chair, resting her head against his knee as he began to play. The melody was soft and slightly imperfect, his fingers not quite as nimble as they once were, but it was beautiful in its imperfection, filled with love and memory and longing. He played the song he had written for her years ago, a simple tune that had become their song. Catherine remembered the night he first played it, sitting on the porch under the stars, his voice nervous as he sang about finding his soulmate. She had cried then too, but those had been tears of happiness. Now her tears were bittersweet, filled with gratitude for what they had shared and grief for what they were losing. When the song ended, William set the guitar aside and gently wiped the tears from Catherine's cheeks. "Don't cry, my love," he said softly. "We've had something that most people search their whole lives for and never find. We've been lucky." "I know," Catherine whispered, "but I'm not ready to let you go." "I'm not ready to leave you either," William admitted, his own eyes glistening with tears. "But we don't get to choose these things. All we can do is make the most of the time we have left." That evening, Catherine suggested they look through the box of letters and cards they had saved over the years. They had kept every birthday card, every anniversary note, every random love letter they had written to each other. The box was full of paper memories, each one a snapshot of their relationship at different points in time. William picked up a card from their first anniversary. Inside, in his neat handwriting, he had written, "1 year down, forever to go. Every day with you is a gift. I love you more than words can say." Catherine remembered receiving it, remembered how her heart had swelled with love for this man who was so good at expressing his feelings. "I meant every word," William said, looking at the card. "I still do. Even if our forever is shorter than we planned, it's still been everything I hoped for." They read through more cards, laughing at some of the silly jokes they had written, crying at the heartfelt declarations of love. Each card was a reminder of the deep bond they had built, the way they had nurtured and cherished their relationship through all the years. "I have an idea," Catherine said suddenly. "Let's make a memory jar. We can write down our favorite memories on slips of paper and put them in a jar. That way, after you're gone, I can pull one out whenever I need to feel close to you." William smiled, though the sadness never left his eyes. "I love that idea. Let's start now." They spent the next hour writing memories. Catherine wrote about their first date, about the time William surprised her with a trip to the art museum in the city, about quiet Sunday mornings reading the paper together. William wrote about watching Catherine paint, about the way she hummed while cooking, about the sound of her laughter echoing through their cottage. Some memories were big and significant. Others were tiny moments that most people would have forgotten. But each one was precious, a small piece of the life they had built together. As William wrote, Catherine noticed his hand shaking more than usual. She could see the effort it took for him to form each letter, but he refused to stop. This was important to him, leaving her these pieces of himself. "I'm writing one more," he said, his voice determined despite his obvious exhaustion. He folded the paper carefully and put it in the jar, then looked at Catherine with an intensity that took her breath away. "Promise me you won't read that one until at least a year after I'm gone." "William, promise me," he insisted gently but firmly. "I promise," Catherine agreed, though curiosity already burned inside her. The next day brought visitors. William's former students, now adults with families of their own, came to pay their respects. They brought stories of how William had changed their lives, how his kindness and wisdom had shaped them into the people they had become. One young man, now a teacher himself, told William that he had inspired his career choice. "You showed me that teaching wasn't just about academics," the young man said, his voice thick with emotion. "You taught me that it was about seeing students as whole people, about believing in them even when they didn't believe in themselves. I try to be that kind of teacher for my students now." William was deeply moved by the visits, though they exhausted him. After everyone left, he slept for hours while Catherine sat beside him, watching his chest rise and fall, counting each breath like a precious gift. That evening, Dr. Peterson came by for a house call. After examining William, he asked to speak with Catherine privately in the kitchen. "I'm afraid we're looking at days now, not weeks," the doctor said gently. "His body is shutting down. I can arrange for hospice care if you'd like additional support." Catherine nodded, unable to trust her voice. She had known this was coming, but hearing it stated so plainly made it terrifyingly real. "Take comfort in the fact that he's not in significant pain," Dr. Peterson continued. "The medication is managing that well. And he has you. That's worth more than any medical care I could provide." After the doctor left, Catherine stood in the kitchen for a long time, trying to compose herself before returning to William. She thought about all the time she had stood in this kitchen, cooking meals, washing dishes, living her ordinary life. How strange that everything looked the same when everything had changed so completely. When she finally went back to the bedroom, William was awake. "What did the doctor say?" he asked, reading her expression. Catherine sat on the edge of the bed and took his hand. There was no point in lying to him. They had always been honest with each other. He said it won't be long now. "A few days, maybe." William nodded slowly, as if he had expected this. "Then we need to make these days count. I need to tell you some things, important things, before I run out of time." "You can tell me anything," Catherine said, fighting to keep her voice steady. "I'm listening." "First, I want you to know that you've made me happier than I ever thought possible," William began. "Every single day with you has been a blessing. Even these last difficult months, having you by my side has made them bearable." He paused, gathering his strength to continue. "Second, I need you to forgive yourself for anything you might feel guilty about after I'm gone. You've been a perfect wife, Catherine. Perfect. There's nothing you could have done differently. Nothing you should regret." "Third," he said, his voice growing weaker, "I need you to promise me that you'll live. Really live. Not just exist, but find joy again. Paint your beautiful pictures. Spend time with Emma. Maybe even love again someday if the right person comes along." "William, I could never," Catherine started, but he squeezed her hand. "You could, and you should. I want you to be happy, Catherine. That's all I've ever wanted. And if someday, years from now, you find someone who makes you smile the way I did, I want you to let yourself feel that. My love for you is strong enough to want your happiness, even after I'm gone." Catherine was crying too hard to speak, so she just held his hand and nodded, trying to commit every word to memory. They stayed like that as the sun set outside their window, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. It was beautiful and sad and perfect in its own way, just like everything else in their life together had been. The hospice nurse arrived the following morning, a gentle woman named Margaret who had seen many families through this difficult journey. She set up equipment discreetly, explained medication schedules, and most importantly, she gave Catherine permission to simply be a wife rather than a caregiver. "Your job now is just to love him," Margaret said kindly. "Let me handle the medical side of things. You focus on making memories and saying what needs to be said." Catherine was grateful for the help, though it was strange having someone else in their private space. But Margaret moved quietly through the cottage, respecting their need for intimacy, while ensuring William remained comfortable. William slept more now, drifting in and out of consciousness. But when he was awake, he was remarkably present, his mind clear despite his body's failing. Catherine learned to treasure these moments of lucidity, never knowing which conversation might be their last. On the third day after Dr. Peterson's visit, William woke from a nap and asked Catherine to help him outside one more time. Margaret was hesitant, worried about the exertion, but William was insistent. "I want to see the lake one last time," he said firmly. "I want to feel the sun on my face and the wind in my hair. Please." Together, Catherine and Margaret helped William into a wheelchair. They bundled him in warm blankets, though the day was mild, and wheeled him down to the dock. Catherine sat beside him on a folding chair, holding his hand while Margaret stayed back at the cottage to give them privacy. The lake was perfect that day, just as it had been on so many other days they had spent here. Birds called from the trees. The water lapped gently against the shore. A light breeze carried the scent of pine and wildflowers. "Do you remember our last anniversary?" William asked, his gaze fixed on the horizon. "We came out here at sunrise, and you said it was the most beautiful thing you'd ever seen." "I remember," Catherine replied softly. "You said the view was nice too, but you were looking at me when you said it." William smiled, that wonderful smile that still had the power to warm her from the inside out. "Because you were the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. You still are." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, both lost in memories. Catherine thought about all the times they had sat in this exact spot, planning their future, talking about their dreams. The future they had imagined looked so different from the reality they were facing now. "Catherine," William said eventually, "I need to ask you something. It's important." "Anything," she replied, turning to face him fully. "After I'm gone, I want you to spread my ashes here on this lake. This place has been our sanctuary, our home. I want to stay here in some way, to always be part of the place where we were happiest." Catherine's throat tightened, but she nodded. "I will, I promise. And I want you to keep living here if it brings you peace," William continued. "But if it's too painful, if the memories are too heavy, sell it and move somewhere new. Don't let this place become a prison of grief. I want it to be a place of love, whether you stay or go." "I don't know if I can live here without you," Catherine admitted, voicing a fear she had been carrying for weeks. "Everything here reminds me of you. How do I wake up in our bed and not reach for you? How do I cook in our kitchen without setting a place for you? How do I walk down to this dock and not hear your voice?" "It will be hard," William acknowledged. "It will be the hardest thing you've ever done. But you're stronger than you know, Catherine. You've always been strong, even when you didn't see it in yourself. And you won't be alone. Emma will be there. Your friends will be there. And in a way I'll be there too, in every corner of this cottage and every memory we made here." A tear rolled down Catherine's cheek, and William reached up with a shaking hand to wipe it away. The gesture was so familiar, so tender, that it broke something loose in Catherine's chest. She began to cry in earnest, all the tears she had been holding back finally flowing free. "I'm so scared," she sobbed. "I'm so scared of losing you. I don't know how to do this." "Neither do I," William admitted, his own eyes wet with tears. "I'm scared too. Scared of leaving you. Scared of the unknown. But I'm not scared of death itself, because I've lived a full life. I've loved and been loved. I've made a difference, however small. And I've had you, which is more than most people get in 10 lifetimes." They stayed by the lake until William grew too tired to sit up any longer. The journey back to the cottage was slow, with William leaning heavily on Catherine and Margaret. By the time they got him into bed, he was exhausted, falling asleep almost immediately. That night, Emma came to stay at the cottage. She had taken time off work to be there for Catherine, to provide support during these final days. The two sisters sat in the living room after William had gone to sleep, drinking tea and talking in hushed voices. "How are you holding up?" Emma asked, though the answer was written plainly on Catherine's tear-stained face. "I don't know," Catherine replied honestly. "Some moments I feel like I'm okay, like I can handle this. Other moments I feel like I'm drowning, like the grief is going to swallow me whole." "That's normal," Emma said, taking her sister's hand. "There's no right way to feel right now. You're losing the love of your life. Of course you're devastated." "He's been my everything for so long," Catherine whispered. "I don't remember who I was before him. How do I figure out who I am after him?" "One day at a time," Emma said gently. "And you won't be alone. I'm here. I'll always be here. We'll figure it out together." The next morning brought a clarity to William that surprised everyone. He woke early, more alert than he had been in days. He asked Catherine to help him shower and shave, wanting to feel like himself again. Then he requested that she set up her easel in the bedroom. "I want to watch you paint," he said. "One last time." Catherine set up her supplies with trembling hands, choosing a small canvas and her favorite brushes. She had been too distraught to paint in weeks, but for William she would try. She began with soft strokes, letting her hand move instinctively across the canvas. The painting that emerged was of the lake at sunset, the sky ablaze with color, the water reflecting the light like liquid gold. But in the foreground she painted two silhouettes sitting side by side on the dock, forever frozen in a moment of perfect peace. William watched her work with an expression of pure love. "You're so talented," he said softly. "Promise me you'll keep painting. Promise me you won't let this gift die with me." "I promise," Catherine said, though she couldn't imagine ever painting again after he was gone. But she would try for him. That afternoon, William asked to see some of his old students one more time. Word had spread through the community that he didn't have long, and several former students had been calling, asking if they could say goodbye. Catherine arranged for them to visit in small groups, mindful of not overtiring William. They came, these people whose lives he had touched, bringing stories and gratitude. A woman who was now a doctor credited William with encouraging her to pursue medicine. A man who had struggled with dyslexia thanked William for believing in him when others had given up. A young mother brought her children to meet the teacher who had changed her life. Each visit left William exhausted but fulfilled. He had lived a meaningful life, and these visits were proof of that. He had made a difference, had touched hearts and changed paths. It was a legacy he could be proud of. As evening fell and the last visitor left, William looked at Catherine with tired but peaceful eyes. "Thank you for arranging that," he said. "I needed to see them, to know that my life mattered." "Your life mattered more than you'll ever know," Catherine said fiercely. "Not just to your students, but to me. You've been the best husband, the best friend, the best person I've ever known. You've made my life infinitely better just by being in it." William pulled her close, and she climbed carefully into bed beside him, laying her head on his chest. His heartbeat was slower now, weaker but still there, still keeping time like it had for all the years she had known him. "I love you, Catherine Morgan Hayes," he whispered into her hair. "I have loved you with everything I am. And that love will continue, even after my heart stops beating. Love like ours doesn't end. It just changes form." "I love you too," Catherine replied, her voice breaking. More than words can ever say. They fell asleep like that, wrapped in each other's arms, savoring what they both knew were among their final moments together. Catherine woke to find William watching her in the early morning light. His eyes were clear but distant, as if he was already seeing something beyond this world. She knew immediately that this was the day. She could feel it in the stillness of the room, in the way he looked at her, in the heaviness that seemed to press down on her chest. "Good morning, my love," he said softly, his voice barely more than a whisper. "Good morning," Catherine replied, forcing herself to smile despite the tears already forming in her eyes. She would be brave for him. She would give him the peaceful goodbye he deserved. Margaret arrived shortly after sunrise, as she did every morning. One look at William told her what Catherine already knew. She quietly checked his vitals, adjusted his medication, and then discreetly left the room to give them privacy. Emma was already in the kitchen, having stayed overnight. When Catherine emerged briefly to make tea, her sister took one look at her face and understood. Emma hugged her tightly, not saying anything because there were no words that could make this better. "Call me if you need me," Emma whispered, "but I'll stay out here unless you want me. This time is for you and William." Catherine nodded gratefully and returned to the bedroom with 2 cups of tea. She helped William sit up slightly, propping pillows behind him, and they sipped their tea together just as they had done thousands of mornings before. But this morning was different. This morning felt like the last page of a beautiful book, the one you didn't want to turn because then the story would be over. "Do you remember the first time we had tea together?" William asked. "At that little cafe after we met at the bookshop?" "Of course I remember," Catherine said, settling beside him on the bed. "You ordered Earl Grey and I ordered chamomile. We talked for so long that they had to ask us to leave so they could close." "I knew that day," William said, his eyes focused on her face with an intensity that made her breath catch. "I knew you were the one. I had never believed in love at first sight until I met you, but there was something about you that felt like coming home." "I felt it too," Catherine admitted. "It scared me a little how immediately and completely I fell for you. But it was also the easiest thing I'd ever done, loving you." They sat in silence for a moment, both lost in the memory of their beginning, when everything was new and full of possibility. It seemed like both yesterday and a lifetime ago. "Catherine," William said, his breathing more labored now, "I need to tell you something important, something I've never said quite right before." "You don't have to say anything," Catherine said, tears streaming down her face. I know. I've always known. But I need to say it, William insisted with a flash of his old determination. I need you to hear it, really hear it, so you can remember it on the days when you feel alone. He took a shaky breath before continuing. You have been the greatest gift of my life. Not just because you loved me, though that would have been enough, but because you saw me, really saw me, and loved me anyway. You've made me a better person just by being yourself. You've filled my life with beauty and laughter and meaning. And even now, facing the end, I have no regrets because I got to spend my life with you. Catherine could barely see through her tears, but she forced herself to look at him, to really see him, to memorize every detail of his face. You've been my everything too, she said, her voice thick with emotion. You've been my best friend, my partner, my home. The world has been brighter, kinder, more beautiful because you were in it, and I am so grateful, so incredibly grateful that I got to be your wife. William reached for her hand, his grip weak but sure. I'm not afraid anymore, he said quietly. I was afraid at first, afraid of leaving you, afraid of the unknown. But I'm not afraid now, because I know that what we have is eternal. Death can't touch it. Our love transcends this moment, this goodbye. It will live on in you, in the memories we've made, in every life we've touched together. I'm afraid, Catherine admitted, her whole body shaking with sobs. I'm so afraid of being without you. I don't know how to exist in a world where you're not here. You'll learn, William said gently. It will be hard at first, impossibly hard. But slowly, day by day, you'll remember how to breathe, how to smile, how to live. And I'll be there in every sunrise you watch from our dock, in every painting you create, in every act of kindness you show to others. I'll be there, Catherine, always. Margaret knocked softly and entered the room. Her practiced eye took in William's condition, and she gave Catherine a look that said they didn't have much time left. She adjusted William's medication one last time, then quietly left again. Would you read to me? William asked. From our book? Catherine knew exactly which book he meant. She retrieved the worn copy of poetry from the bedside table, the same book she had been reaching for that day in the bookshop when they first met. She opened it to their favorite poem, one they had read countless times over the years. Her voice shook as she read, but she kept going, giving William this final gift. He closed his eyes, a small smile on his lips as he listened to her voice reading words they both knew by heart. When she finished the poem, William opened his eyes one last time. Come here, he whispered, and Catherine leaned in close. He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips, each kiss gentle and filled with love. Thank you, he breathed, for everything, for choosing me, for loving me, for this beautiful life we've built together. Thank you for choosing me, Catherine replied, her tears falling onto his face. Thank you for 23 years of love and laughter and joy. Thank you for being exactly who you are. William's breathing was growing shallower, his grip on her hand loosening. Catherine called out for Emma and Margaret, knowing the end was near. They came quickly, Emma moving to Catherine's other side while Margaret stood respectfully at the foot of the bed. I love you, William whispered, his eyes locked on Catherine's face. I love you so much. I love you too, Catherine said, her voice breaking. I will always love you, forever and always. Emma took Catherine's free hand, offering silent support as they watched William's breathing slow. Catherine kept her eyes on his face, wanting him to see her love for him right until the end. It's okay, Catherine whispered through her tears. You can let go now. I'll be okay. It's okay to rest now, my love. William's eyes fluttered closed. His chest rose and fell one more time, then was still. The room seemed to hold its breath as if the universe itself was acknowledging the passing of a beautiful soul. Margaret stepped forward and gently checked for a pulse, then nodded solemnly. He's gone, she said softly. I'm so sorry. Catherine leaned forward, pressing her forehead against William's chest where his heart had beat so faithfully for all the years she had known him. She stayed there for a long time, feeling the warmth slowly fade from his body, trying to comprehend that he was really gone. Emma wrapped her arms around her sister, holding her as great racking sobs shook Catherine's body. The grief was overwhelming, a tsunami of pain that threatened to drown her. But somewhere beneath the agony she felt something else. Gratitude for the time they had shared, for the love they had known, for the grace of being able to say goodbye. The morning sun streamed through the window, painting everything in golden light. Outside, the lake sparkled peacefully, unchanged by the profound loss that had just occurred within the cottage walls. Birds sang in the trees. The world kept turning. Life went on even when it felt like it shouldn't. Catherine held William's hand for a long time, not ready to let go. Emma stayed beside her, patient and loving, offering the silent support that only a sister could give. Margaret moved quietly around the room, doing what needed to be done with respect and compassion. Finally, Catherine leaned down and kissed William's forehead one last time. "Goodbye, my love," she whispered. "Thank you for everything. Rest now. I'll carry your love with me always." As she stood up, supported by Emma's strong arm, Catherine caught sight of the memory jar on the dresser, filled with all the beautiful moments they had written down together. She saw the leather journal William had given her, filled with his letters for the years ahead. She saw the painting she had created of them sitting together by the lake, forever captured in that moment of peace. William was gone, but his love remained. In every object, every memory, every corner of the life they had built together. The goodbye was devastating, but the love was eternal, and somehow Catherine knew she would find a way to keep living, to honor his memory by finding joy again, just as he had asked her to do. The days after William's death passed in a haze of arrangements and rituals. Catherine moved through them mechanically, making decisions about the funeral service, accepting condolences from friends and neighbors, signing papers that needed to be signed. Emma stayed with her through it all, a steady presence that kept Catherine anchored when she felt like she might drift away entirely. The funeral was held at the small church in town, the same church where they had been married. It was packed with people whose lives William had touched over the years. Former students spoke about his kindness and wisdom. Colleagues talked about his dedication and compassion. Friends shared stories that made people laugh through their tears. Catherine had asked to speak last. She stood at the podium looking out at all the faces gathered to honor William, and for a moment she couldn't find her voice. Then she felt it, a warmth in her chest as if William was there beside her, giving her strength. William believed that love was the most important thing, she began, her voice soft but steady. He believed that kindness mattered more than success, that relationships were more valuable than possessions, that the simple moments were the ones worth treasuring. He lived these beliefs every single day of his life. She paused, gathering herself before continuing. He was my husband, my best friend, my soulmate. He was also a teacher, a mentor, a friend to many. But mostly he was a man who understood what truly mattered in life. And he taught all of us by example how to love fully and live purposefully. "I miss him with every breath I take," Catherine said, her voice breaking slightly. "But I am so grateful, so incredibly grateful that I got to love him and be loved by him. That kind of love doesn't come along every day, and even though he's gone, that love continues. It lives on in all of us who were fortunate enough to know him." After the service, they held a small gathering at the cottage. Catherine had initially resisted the idea, not sure she could handle having people in their private sanctuary. But Emma had gently insisted, and Catherine was glad she had. There was something healing about filling the cottage with life and laughter, about sharing memories of William in the place he had loved most. As the sun began to set, Catherine slipped away from the crowd and walked down to the dock. She needed a moment alone, a moment to breathe and process everything. She sat in the spot where she and William had spent so many peaceful hours, and for the first time since his death, she felt a moment of calm. Emma found her there a little while later. "How are you doing?" she asked, sitting down beside her sister. "I don't know," Catherine replied honestly. "Sometimes I forget just for a second and I think I need to tell William something. Then I remember and it's like losing him all over again." "That's normal," Emma said gently. "Grief isn't linear. It comes in waves and sometimes those waves knock you down. But you're strong, Catherine. You'll get through this." "He asked me to spread his ashes here," Catherine said, looking out at the water, "on the lake. I think I want to do it soon, just the two of us. Would you help me?" "Of course," Emma replied, taking her sister's hand. "Whatever you need." They chose a calm morning a week later, when the lake was mirror smooth and the sky was painted with the colors of sunrise. Catherine held the urn in trembling hands and Emma stood beside her, offering silent support. "I love you, William," Catherine said as she opened the urn. "Thank you for everything. Rest peacefully now." She scattered the ashes over the water, watching them drift and settle. becoming part of the lake that William had loved so much. It was both heartbreaking and beautiful, a final goodbye and a way of keeping him close. In the weeks that followed, Catherine struggled to find a new normal. The cottage felt too empty, too quiet without William's presence. She would wake up in the morning and reach for him only to find cold sheets. She would cook dinner and automatically set 2 places at the table. Every corner held a memory that made her heart ache. Emma suggested that Catherine come stay with her for a while, but Catherine refused. As painful as it was, she needed to be in the cottage, surrounded by the life she and William had built. Running away wouldn't make the grief any easier to bear. Instead, she forced herself to establish new routines. She woke early each morning and had her tea by the window, watching the sunrise over the lake just as she and William used to do. She took long walks, breathing in the fresh air and letting nature soothe her wounded heart. And slowly, very slowly, she began to paint again. The first painting was of William, captured from memory on a day when he had been sitting in his favorite chair, reading. She painted for hours, losing herself in the work, letting her grief flow through her brush onto the canvas. When it was finished, she cried looking at it, but they were healing tears. 3 months after William's death, Catherine finally opened the journal he had left her. She had been saving it, afraid of the emotions it would stir up. But one particularly difficult night, when the loneliness felt unbearable, she reached for it. The first letter was dated for 1 week after his death. She opened it with shaking hands and began to read. "My dearest Catherine," it began in William's familiar handwriting. "If you're reading this, I've been gone for a week. I hope you're taking care of yourself. I hope Emma is staying close. I hope you're allowing yourself to grieve, but also allowing yourself moments of peace. Remember what I told you. Our love doesn't end. I'm still with you, in every memory, every sunrise, every beat of your heart. I love you. Always." Catherine read the letter 3 times, then pressed it to her chest. It was both painful and comforting, hearing William's voice through his words. She decided to read 1 letter each week, just as he had intended, allowing his love to guide her through the difficult months ahead. As spring turned to summer, Catherine found herself slowly emerging from the deepest darkness of her grief. She accepted an invitation to dinner with friends. She spent a day helping Emma paint her living room. She even laughed at a joke someone told, then immediately felt guilty for experiencing joy. But she remembered William's words. He had wanted her to live, to find happiness again. Honoring his memory didn't mean staying in a state of perpetual sadness. It meant carrying his love forward and letting it inspire her to embrace life. 6 months after William's death, Catherine was invited to speak at the local school where William had taught for so many years. They were establishing a scholarship in his name for students who demonstrated kindness and compassion toward others. Catherine was nervous about speaking publicly again, but she knew William would have been honored. Standing in the school auditorium, looking at the faces of current students and remembering all the students William had influenced over the years, Catherine felt a surge of pride. William's legacy lived on, not just in her heart, but in the countless lives he had touched. "My husband believed that every student had potential," she told the gathered crowd. "He believed that kindness was a strength, not a weakness. He believed that the measure of a life wasn't in achievements or accolades, but in the positive impact you had on others. This scholarship honors those beliefs, and I'm so grateful that his values will continue to inspire young people for years to come." After the ceremony, several students approached her to share their own memories of William. One young girl, shy but determined, told Catherine that Mr. Hayes had been the first teacher to believe in her. She was now planning to study education in college so she could be a teacher like him. Catherine drove home that evening feeling something she hadn't felt in months: hope. Not the naive hope of her younger days, but a mature, hard-won hope born from loss and survival. She was learning to carry her grief and her love simultaneously, to honor William's memory while still moving forward. 1 year after William's death, Catherine stood by the lake at sunrise, holding the folded piece of paper from the memory jar, the one William had told her not to read until at least a year had passed. Her hands shook as she unfolded it, wondering what final message he had left for her. The note was longer than the others, written in William's neat handwriting. It read, "My darling Catherine, if you're reading this, you've made it through your first year without me. I'm so proud of you. I know it's been hard, probably harder than anything you've ever faced, But you've survived, and I hope you're beginning to heal. I want you to know that loving you was the greatest privilege of my life. You made every day brighter, every moment sweeter, and now I want you to make me a promise. Promise me that you'll open your heart again. Not necessarily to romantic love, though I wouldn't object if you found that. But open your heart to joy, to friendship, to new experiences. Don't let the fear of loss keep you from living fully. Because, Catherine, you have so much life left to live, so much love left to give. The world needs your light, your kindness, your art. Don't hide it away. Shine brightly, my love. Live boldly. And know that wherever I am, I'm cheering you on. So proud of the strong, brave, beautiful woman you are. I love you forever. Your William. Catherine read the note 3 times, tears streaming down her face. Then she looked out at the lake, at the water sparkling in the morning sun, at the world that continued to turn and change and offer new possibilities, I promise. She whispered to the wind, to the water, to William's memory. I promise I'll keep living. I promise I'll